welcome once again to the Ultra podcast. Today we have Rehabs UK's Managing Director, Lester Morse, with us once again. Lester.
G'day.
My name's Matt, and today we're going to be discussing the untimely, really, death of 12-step recovery advocate and Friends star Matthew Perry, popularly known as Chandler, as his character was on Friends. But he passed away aged 54. He was a staunch recovery advocate, and he openly admits his struggle with alcohol and prescription medications, being addicted to Vicodin and alcohol together for many years. He actually once reported to have attended 6,000 AA meetings. Apparently he went to rehab 15 times and detoxed from alcohol 65 times, so it's a really big battle. He once estimated he spent $9 million trying to get sober, which is, I suppose it's all relative to the amount of money that you have, but you can see, he really struggled with this for a long time. So although there's no toxicology report yet, we don't know. There was supposedly antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications found at his home, but we don't really know the true causes of his death. But it does feel like a huge loss for the recovery community. But Lester, the stories that we hear from people like Matthew Perry and other celebrities, are they really relevant? Are they really relatable for the average Joe? And I kind of want to couple that with the question, why is it such a big loss for the abstinence-based recovery community in particular?
Well, I think one of the things that you learn in early recovery, when you start going to a few meetings, I've been to meetings in Los Angeles where they've got famous people, and but I think from early on you kind of also realise that in an AA meeting you can have surgeons, doctors, airline pilots, prostitutes, builders, architects, old ladies, young girls, old men, young boys, gay people, straight people. You realise there's every kind of person, and that addiction really has no boundaries, or it's for everybody. And I think that you realise that again, I think it's one of the great things about the 12-step fellowship that doesn't get talked about, that it broke a lot of boundaries down back in the day. It was always a place of equality, no matter who you was. I think it's one of the first places the Catholics and Protestants would kind of mix up, because I think people have that feeling that you're sort of surviving some sort of disaster. So I guess, if all of the people on the Titanic, the rich and the poor, they'd all have that experience in common, which would bind them together. So I think you sort of realise that early on, that somebody wouldn't say, well, he's rich and I'm not. I think you understand that you've all got the same struggles. In actual fact, again, like I said, I used to go to Los Angeles now and then. Had some friends out there in recovery, so I used to go and they'd show me around, and we'd go to meetings together and stuff like that. I'd like to rent a Harley and ride around on that and living the dream. But I remember one day he was driving past the Beverly Hills graveyard, and he said that graveyard is full of young people, probably more so than the rest of society, because the thing is, when you're kind of rich beyond measure, like most of them people are, there's no restrictions to the amount of drugs, fast cars and strange behaviours that you can get up to. Them people live in a world of extremes. Most people's drug addiction is kind of tempered by their economic situation, and so them guys, they have extreme addiction, and I don't know whether that would be something that most people would acknowledge, that they're a lot more susceptible to overdose and harm. And again, especially in America, especially some of the drugs that he was using. You know, that was a big issue back in the day, probably still is when I was out there. That you know they come into treatment and recovery, but they have access to all these private doctors that are kind of happy to write out whatever script that you want, as long as you're willing to pay. I think it's kind of what kills your Michael Jacksons and Elvis and all the big stars. Most of them with prescription drugs because they could afford the doctors, and so but a lot of people were in recovery were getting massive problems on the Vicodin and Oxycontin and stuff like that. And, it was a big issue when I was out there a few times. And I think he was definitely one of them. An article where he'd be taking about 55 Vicodin in a day. Like you don't know how they don't overdose, and I'd be surprised if it didn't contribute to whatever happened to him.
So Matthew Perry was a 12-step advocate as well, and I know yourself, Lester, you're a big believer of abstinence-based recovery. So I know Matthew Perry obviously spent some time on these prescription drugs, but I understand that he really did try and help fly the flag for abstinence-based recovery. Can you tell us a bit more about that and about sort of?
Yeah, and he did. I think he definitely did fly the flag. I think he was a great advocate. I was definitely a fan of him on Friends and his 12-step advocacy. I see him in some very difficult interviews because it's not the easy flag to fly. But I see him go through some very uncomfortable questioning and holding the ground. So, he's somebody that I watched quite a few interviews that he done and showed some interest and thought he was doing a great job, putting himself out there to put that point of view across. That's not always the most accepted one, but he did. He did. So he did a good job. I think. Legacy wise, I think he definitely probably touched a lot of people's lives. And again, it's with these guys. It's good that they do speak out because they are the people that get on the chat shows and reach massive audiences, especially about the prescription medication, because I honestly don't think people realise what an incredibly difficult that addiction is to break. I'd say this is that, like things like heroin are mind altering, but prescription medications are mind mutating. That bridge that we talk about to normal living. It's a lot longer, harder bridge by far to come off them medications that they're taking. They are brutal. They're very powerful and very destructive. And if he did manage to get away from them in the end, how many rehabs did he say he went to? Yeah, well, I just think it'd take about that. It's so damaging. Prescription medication addiction. It's like another level addiction. It's worse than heroin. Worse than heroin.
So, do you think there could be some kind of link to these like high stress jobs like acting or doctors, lawyers, maybe people in these like celebrity environments that could potentially make them like more prone to addiction? Is it something to do with stress and like wanting to relax down from it? And is that a part of it, do we think?
Well, for somebody, probably, but on the whole, everybody thinks that whatever they're doing is, like, people think they're an alcoholic. You have more chance of being an alcoholic because you're from Ireland, or, mind you, they did used to say in London, as a joke, that if you took all the Irish out of the AA meetings, we can have them in a phone box. But but everybody sort of believes that whatever it is that they're doing, like actors, plumbers, airline pilots, they all think that it's the career is what's causing it. But again, you've only got to go to a few AA meetings or work in a rehab and see all the different kinds of people. And one of the things that we used to do in groups with people is to say, look, why did you start drinking or taking drugs? And it would go around the room, and people would always, oh, because I got molested, because I got let down, because I got, abandoned, because I'm black, because I'm white, because I'm gay, because I was poor, because I'm, got ADHD, just every reason that was possible, people would say. But then I'd go, hang on, no, I'm asking, why did you start? And they're like, well, that's the reason. I said, no, think about it. You didn't go, oh, I feel like I've got low self-esteem, so I'm going to go and have a drink, or I got molested, so I'm going to shoot heroin. That's not how it happened. And most people, they're like, well, I just started drinking and really liked it. I liked the effect it had on me. And so that other stuff could have contributed to it, but when you say, but look, he never got molested and he's drunk and drug addict. She never got abandoned and she's still a drug addict. He ain't gay, but he's still a drug addict. It's like, look, you've all got a different reason for the same problem. And again, I think when the trauma thing come out, it was like, oh, well, we can clump all of that into one cause, which is trauma. But then I think, but if you take that a little bit further, not everybody that has trauma becomes an addict. Now people go, well, everyone's an addict has got trauma. It's like, well, again, most people have, and most people are looking for a reason. Is it some life event that's caused it? But then you do meet people when you work in a rehab and go around hundreds of thousands of meetings over 30 years that go, honestly, I don't remember any reason. I don't have anything like that I can tell you that was the cause. Of course, most people do, and most people are glad to grab hold of a problem to tell you why they're behaving so badly. And mostly, I think it's to elicit either forgiveness or elicit some other self pity or emotion from people. I don't, and again, so I don't like. I'm not keen on straight away when people are talking to me to let you believe that. And again, you can say, well, what's it got to do with you? What I believe? It's like, no, I'm just telling you it. But when I'm listening to the news and they ask homeless people, why are you homeless? And they're like, oh, my wife left me. I'm like, I need to go and speak to his wife. Because she'll be like, he's a drunk. He's a pain in the ass. He's stealing off me all the time. He's smacking the kids around. He's spending all the wages. He's coming home abusing me. I couldn't stand it after 10 years. I kicked him out. There's nothing to do with his wife leaving him. And not saying that don't happen. I'm just not saying, hey, well, I'm not accepting what they're telling me because I've worked through and they're going to tell you whatever elicits emotion from you that gets them what they want. But I've learned through 30 years in Alcoholics Anonymous and talking to thousands and thousands of people that that's usually not the truth. But people like to believe it. And then they make a big story about it, like, oh, this poor man, he had such a terrible time, and that's why he's an alcoholic. Again, I'm not belittling that stuff that happens to people. What I'm trying to say is that I think it's something deeper than that in the mind of certain people. And it doesn't occur in everybody. So a lot of people have trauma, a lot of people get molested, a lot of people, I mean, it's shocking how many people you meet in your life that have been molested. Not all of them are drug addicts, not all of them are alcoholics. So, and everybody's had some sort of trauma or not, but not all of them have turned to drugs or needed therapy. A lot of them get on with their life. It's their ability to respond is different. I think it's the way that you respond into life. So it's not what's happening to you, it's the way you respond to it that tells us, do you have this problem? If you're not responding very well to it, then I think there's some grey matter missing, some neural net missing, and it's missing in at least 1 in 10 people born on the earth, and we call them alcoholics. But it's nothing to do with drink, it's to do with whatever's missing in their head that's causing them to not be able to solve problems very well and then start self-medicating, which is why I don't think that keeping people on medication and drugs is necessarily the solution. I think, in actual fact, it can be a blocker to the solution. That's because I think that what we've learned through the programs and the 12-step program and certain therapies is that you can redevelop that part of somebody's brain, but it is a lot of hard work and it is difficult. And so, to me, that's what recovery is more about, and I think that's what that Matthew Perry was advocating. But the medication that he was on makes that very difficult because it is very tormenting, addiction without drugs. To live without treating your addiction at all, without drugs or therapy, not treating it is very tormenting. It does need treatment. I just don't believe that taking chemicals or some of these medicines is actually treating it. It's just pain killing it. I think it's something that goes on in the centre. It's the way we kind of say it. With addiction centres in the brain. Not everybody has it. He definitely had it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense to me, yeah. So obviously there's programs, there's 12-step programs where people can seek help, and there's some stigma behind some 12-step programs, and I think there's also other options, and you know anybody that's struggling should always be seeking advice. That's always the first step, no matter what they go for. Do you have any suggestions for where people can go to seek help? Of course, Rehabs UK, who sponsor the podcast, and as your company is,
Oh,
we
we have a
have
lot
treatment
of,
advisors that you can talk to.
yeah, we have a lot of information on there that people can read. I think becoming informed is very important because one of the things I've learned, the more I've learned about my condition and addiction over the years, is how people really misunderstand addiction. And because they misunderstand it, I don't think it gets treated very well. And I don't think by any stretch of imagination, this country, England, has got a grip on treating addiction very well. I think it's actually treating it very badly. I mean, which is why we've got growing death rates and prisons are overflowing and people are turning up and in A&E with mental health problems in ever-growing numbers. And we used to have this joke as well back in the early days that we'd say, look, addiction isn't a Valium deficiency because doctors seem to think it was a Valium deficiency because they would just give everyone loads of Valium. And again, even in my career, when I started my rehab, we needed one drug safe for the clients. And we noticed there was ever increasing amounts of medication being doled out. And we ended up needing 3 drug safes. And when you look at all the facts and figures and statistics, it's just growing worse and worse in larger numbers on every metric in society because they're just not understanding the problem. And you can't medicate addiction away. It's not a Valium deficiency. It's not a drug deficiency. So, not everybody's turning up to A&E that has an addiction problem. That's just when you get really bad. Not everyone gets to that point. Not everybody's turning up at Turning Point or Change, Grow and Live with an addiction problem. I mean, a lot of people are going to their GPs, but they're not going there telling them they're drinking too much. They're telling them they're depressed and they give them antidepressants, which is on the increase. I think antidepressants has almost doubled the amount of people on antidepressants in the last 20 years. I think 70% of the people that actually did turn up for treatment said that they had mental health problems as well, which were going untreated, or truth is, a lot of the time in rehab, most people that had kind of all kinds of mental health problem diagnoses and all kinds of medications, it just wasn't true. The symptoms were being caused by their addiction. But it wasn't really something that the doctors, they could get you on the medication, but they kind of loathe to get you off of it. And again, some of them people had been on very powerful mind altering substances for like 20 years. I mean, it will literally rewires your brain. Like literally, your neural network forms to support your drug soaked brain. And to get it back to a normal brain takes putting your brain in a different environment long enough for it to rewire itself, which it will do. That's the good news. You've got neuroplasticity and you've got mirror neurons, which is why it's good to be around people in recovery, because your brain mirrors them and it changes. You can change your mind, but it takes strong communities of people in recovery to do that, which is, again, what I've been trying to warn people, the danger of what's going on in our country. Recovery's been defunded. Them environments have been defunded. And so, because they've cut back funding for long-term stays in rehab, which is damaging the recovery community, it's not only going to pull down all of the good work that's been done over the last 50 years, it's going to cause the death rates to rise. And all the money's going into harm minimalisation. It's a bit of a scare for me, because them communities are what help to change the mind of the people that do get abstinent recovery. And again, abstinent recovery is like a dirty word a lot of the time, because most of the people are sold out on harm minimalisation. It's almost like a terrible thing to tell someone you could stop taking drugs. It is hard, don't get me wrong, and it's a difficult business, but what makes recovery work is usually other people in recovery. So if you start reducing the recovering communities, then it's going to be harder for the new people to get recovered. Because you find that Matthew Perry, like I said, he's 6,000 meetings, but I can tell you as well, we spent thousands of hours on the telephone with people in recovery. He spent thousands of hours drinking coffee, hanging out, supporting other people, being supported himself. If it wasn't for all them other people, it never would have worked for him. Never would have worked for him. Again, prescription medications is probably one of the most difficult addictions to break. It's deeply misunderstood. Deeply misunderstood. I think if people realised how powerful them antidepressants and them medications they were being given, and again, I'm really believing now they're starting to record and tie that we're going to find that once they start really researching it, that them drugs are far more responsible for deaths than heroin and cocaine. Far more people are dying and being put at risk of death because of the medications that are being given out willy-nilly. They're very powerful. Antidepressants are very powerful mind-altering substances. Do a lot of damage to a lot of people. I think even like 20,000 people a year. I just sent you that statistic. I think about 20,000 a year die from just getting the wrong prescriptions and things like that. That's never mind, I'm pretty sure you'd find that most people that commit suicide are on antidepressants. Most people that overdose, it's not because of illegal drugs, it's because they're medications that they're getting, that they're mixing. I'm pretty sure once they really drill down on the statistics, what we're going to find is a lot of that legal prescribed medication is responsible for a lot of overdose and a lot of suicide, and in children. It's the side effects are terrible. And again, it's like
I suppose one of the big takeaways we're getting from here really is to like find a good strong community of people that you can be around to support you, because you're not going to be able to do it alone, whether that's AA meetings or whatever that might be. You need that support network around you and those sponsors and somebody to talk to and somebody that's been
yeah,
through it before.
yeah. And I think for most people, see, professionals are not really the solution, because again, when you're around like the 12-step fellowship, you're around a lot of people in recovery. And again, look, problems happen. I understand that. You know, sometimes you're drowned and then a pirate ship turns up. You get in the pirate ship. I'm not saying it's always the best place to be, but I'm not saying 12-step fellowships are all pirates. But my point is that when you're that desperate, then people can save your lives, and they do save each other's lives. That's whatever anyone thinks about the 12-step fellowship. If it was researched, I know for a fact that them people in them meetings, they give each other a hell of a lot of support, like hell of a lot of support. They really go the extra mile for each other and help each other stay alive. And I don't think anything equals that. I just don't think there is anything that equals that fellowship. I don't think professionals can synthetically produce that kind of fellowship. And so I wish it was given more acknowledgement of how valuable it is, no matter how annoying it might be to professionals and how annoying it might be to, often, reading on LinkedIn is that, even people having a go at people in recovery for going on about people taking methadone. And look, methadone don't work for everybody, and it kills about, I think, 700 people last year died of methadone. It went up 28% methadone death, through COVID. It's not like it doesn't work for everybody, and a lot of people die in 12-step recovery. They probably need to take some medication. It's complicated, but I think it needs both. It needs both of them to be given the acknowledgement of the good that each of them do, and they both need to be supported, because it's like the 12-step fellowship. It's like a free, hard-working, wonderful workforce of volunteers. I think in our country now, 50% of the drug and alcohol services are people that have come through 12-step recovery. And a lot of them come through rehab. And so if you start defunding the source that helps them people exist, you're getting rid of a lot of people that need it to go that extra mile. And so I think for myself, I'm a believer that, the substitute for me was the people that I need is the support. It's nice going to AA meetings. That's been good for me. It's nice helping other people. That's been good for me. It's nice working a spiritual program. I love doing my spiritual program. I love meditating. I love praying. I love talking about God. But I can tell you, mate, when my head goes west, I'm not praying. I'm on the phone to someone. And without that other person to help me, I don't think I'd be lost. So for me, it's unequaled. You've got to be around a group of people that you can call 24/7. Because I don't know when my head's going west. It could be 3 in the morning. I know if I phone one of my guys up at 3 in the morning, they'd pick up and they wouldn't be angry, and they'd drive and sit with me if that's what I needed. Very rarely happens these days, but in the early days, it's a few times, mate. I thought 3 in the morning, I'm coming undone like a cheap suit. And all I want to do is go and use. And instead of picking up the drug, I pick up the phone, and somebody was there in a short period of time, making coffee, talking to me, sitting with me till it passed. You can't get that from professionals. So again, professionals are all good as far as they go. 12-step fellowships as good as far as they go. But if you're drowning and you're being critical of the lifeboat, I don't know, well, you keep jumping back in the ocean just because the lifeboat ain't up to your standards. I don't know what to say about that. I was desperate, mate, when that lifeboat turned up with the pirates in. I got in it, realised I was a pirate myself. So that worked out alright for a few years, and then I wanted to change. And I jumped ship. Go and find one I like, sailing around it. I've got a lot of nautical analogies, I don't know why, but again, I really like that idea that, because again, addiction is a mental problem. Now, when my head's good, it's good, but when it can switch, and if I don't know how to get it back again, I like that idea that, when the boat's in the ocean, there's no problem. So when I'm in the world, there's no problem. But when the ocean starts getting in the boat starts sinking. When the world gets in my head, I just start sinking. And unless I know how to bail it out again, I'm lost. And so that's all I know, mate, really. And again, Matthew Perry was an advocate of that as we started. And God bless him. And I hope that his legacy was something for him to be proud of, because I'm pretty sure it was. Pretty sure he done a lot of great advocacy and helped a lot of people. And it's a shame whatever happened to him was a shame. But it's a tough business, and I'm sure he did a lot of damage to his body with that crappy pharmaceutical medicines that he was taking, abusing. Anyway, not a lot more to say about that. And I think, has she got any more questions, mate?
No, that's perfect, Lester. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your time today. As always, there'll be notes in the show notes for this episode, so if you do require any help, please reach out. We do have treatment advisors who can point you in the right direction. It's not one shoe fits all, so please do give us a call, and you can always get in touch with people that can point you in the right direction and find out the best possible options for yourself. But thank you again, Lester, and really appreciate your time.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. God bless.
Cheers.